What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again. So the third and what I believe to be the final faction rally of Season 3 has come and gone. And let me fucking tell ya, these things suck. And it's not about a grind. Don't get me wrong, I like grinds, right? You're talking to the guy who's been like living in the tree of probability strike every time it comes up, so I can get the DFA, and I still haven't gotten the DFA. If the Whisper of the Worm was an example of content that players wanted to play and engage in, then faction rallies are categorically content that players don't want to engage in. Like, real talk, who the fuck thought this was fun? What Herculean leap in logic did somebody decide that getting an annoying debuff and running lost sectors over and over and over and over and over and over and over again ad nauseum was a good idea? Who then thought that this buff needed to affect people doing escalation protocol? I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Fuck that guy. And then, on top of all of that, they decided to tie faction rallies to exotic catalysts. Like, you fucking what, mate? So of course, in predictable fashion, we saw the catalyst for the best PvP weapon win Rally 1. We saw the catalyst for one of the better PvE weapons win Rally 2. And wouldn't you fucking know, color me fucking surprised, during Rally 3, the catalyst, which nobody had gone after previously, fucking won. Gasp, shock, surprise, lightning crackle, lightning crackle, lightning crackle, boom. These faction rallies are less about repping factions with equally cool rewards and more about collecting them all, from best to worst. For example, if they implemented the current Season 3 system in Season 2, when Graviton Lance was, for a lack of a better word, shit, then future War Cult would have won the first rally, because everybody just kinda likes Sunshot. Then it would have been a toss-up between Dead Orbit and New Monarchy, leaning more towards New Monarchy because Sweet Business, at least at that time, had some PvE uses. But now you hand Dead Orbit a catalyst, which gives extra aim assistance to a weapon at the very, very top of the PvP meta. I wonder what's gonna happen. Gasp, shock, surprise, Dead Orbit won! Who fucking saw that coming? And to be clear, I'm not being salty about this because I'm a huge New Monarchy fanboy. I'm not at all. These are just really bad rallies with really awkwardly placed rewards. That and New Monarchy is still leading in overall victories, so there you go. All I'm doing is illustrating the point of who didn't see that happening at all. Like, you know, sunrises, sunsets kind of thing. Bungie also tried to do this weird thing where they tried to draw certain classes to certain factions with exotic ornaments to armor that nobody really uses. On top of all of that, endgame activities like doing the Nightfall or the Raid only gave you a handful of tokens, wherein running a lost sector each day for the first time with 3 stacks of Renowned would give you 20 tokens per character. How is it that this easy BS daily login challenge is worth more than a raid? So faction rallies have a lot of issues. Part of it stems from being tied to lost sectors, because damn it if Bungie doesn't want to make lost sectors work. Lost sectors, while a nice addition, like a neat little kind of thing that exists there in the world, have proven to be relatively pointless. I mean, obviously you can't have really cool endgame loot tied to something you can just walk into, but players spend most of their time in the end game. So it is what it is. It becomes pointless relatively quickly. And with the Whisper of the Worm, I think the majority of the community came together and said, you know that quest, you know that area? Wouldn't it be cool if all lost sectors were like that? Or just some of them were like that? Where it was this really cool, tough challenge to get through with a really cool reward at the end of it? Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it? Another part of the equation is, of course, rewards. Like, why isn't there an exotic ornament for each class in each faction? Also, What the hell happened to exotic class items from Destiny 1? And why are the exotic catalysts so clearly one-sided? I mean, look at the catalysts. Look at the factions that won. Look at the order that they won in. Is anyone surprised at all? Like, at all? I know I keep harping on this, but come on. Anyone? At all? No? Okay. But of course, I wouldn't have made a video if I didn't have a couple of ideas on how to fix all of this. Because, of course, I have a couple of ideas on how to fix all of this. While a lot of these problems are self-evident to anyone who's played with fairly obvious fixes, I mean, look, more loot will of course help. So will rebalancing how rep is earned. More difficult activities should yield better rewards. Clearly. But in the course of writing this video, I had another idea. Factions and faction rallies need a complete overhaul just in general. One of the first things that I would address is something that I talked about in the Fixing the Story of Destiny series that I did. Why doesn't faction gear have lore tabs? It's not like there's not lore already written that could just be slapped on them if you wanted to be lazy, like how New Monarchy stomped out the Concordat at Bannerfall, or how the FWC likes to put people into machines and cook their brain, or how Dead Orbit is basically nothing more than stereotypical, nihilistic, emo kid, space gypsies. Or, and better yet, these are three of the most powerful entities in the city. The faction wars was a thing. Write about the faction wars. Write about how these three factions come to power. There's just so much potential being wasted. So, give these different factions different stories. Build up the lore around them. Explain the politics of the city better. Being a New Monarchy fan, I've seen the argument so many times that people think that this city is a democracy, and New Monarchy wants to overthrow this democracy and crown a king. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Which couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, New Monarchy wants to crown a king, or a queen, and dissolve the consensus by vote of the consensus, which, realistically, when you think about it, is never going to happen. The other factions, being part of the consensus, are never going to give up their power. That said, the city's governing body is a theocracy, previously ruled by the speaker who, if you recall, had Osiris thrown out of the city over a theological disagreement. But you only know this if you dig into the lore. This is something so basic and even just so relevant to the factions and the faction rallies that we should know it. We should know how things work in the city, especially when you have an event that is predicated on the governing of the city and how the factions are viewed by the city. Also, just look at how well the Whisper of the Worm quest was received. These type of quests are always well received by the Destiny community, so why not have another quest like that tied to faction rallies? Why not have it where you have to reach rank X with your faction, and they send you on a mission to go recover X exotic, and then you can rerun the quest for the catalyst and different faction ornaments, and it's just something really cool, and your faction can be part of the narrative, and this expands the world with a potentially great quest and a great reward that anyone can get. Also, just off the top of my head as well, pledging to a faction should be a meaningful choice. It should also be a choice that carries past the initial faction rally week. So, while this isn't terribly relevant now, as everything faction sell is statically rolled, in the future, hopefully, these weapons and armor will have random rolls. So Bungie, what you do is you give each faction a base set of gear. Hell, I'll make it easy on you. Take the gear that they already have, maybe tweak the stats a little bit, and just give them random rolls. Take this gear and have it so I can earn this gear 24/7, 365, just like I could in Destiny 1. If I go play PvP, I get faction rep at all times. If I do a patrol, I get faction rep at all times. If I do a raid, guess what? Faction rep. Just like in Destiny 1. Then you have another set of gear. Make this like a prestige set of gear. I know, novel concept, right? And then during the faction rallies, because you'll still have the faction rallies, you give players access to these new weapons and gear. and ornaments and all this other stuff. And for a price, you can reforge these prestige armor and weapons. Basically, what I'm saying is take the factions from Destiny 1, exactly how they worked in Destiny 1, and then add the Iron Banner from Destiny 1 Year 1. But wait, there's even more! Not only would you still have a faction winner's weapon that would be able to be reforged and purchased by all players, but from the end of the rally, where the faction winner is decided, to the beginning of the next rally, any tokens turned in by the winning faction will be worth double, basically dropping the price of a faction engram from 20 tokens to 10 between the rallies. Now, why is this a great reward? Well, because it lets the winning team obviously get more reward packages, and because there is a base set of gear that you can always get that has RNG perks, I can say turn in 100 tokens in an attempt to get a cool New Monarchy hand cannon and get double the chances at it, and maybe, just maybe, I get that cool Fatebringer or Iasaluna roll that I always wanted on a New Monarchy hand cannon. So, simply put, my ideal faction interaction would look something kind of like Destiny 1, where factions were always something you could work towards. They would have a base set of gear that you could always get and you could always work towards, and you could always hope dropped a random rolled god roll weapon. But then you'd have faction rallies, and these rallies would, like Destiny 1 Year 1 Iron Banner, or kind of like they're implemented now where you have the new weapons on the item screen and you have to work towards them, but you have all the old weapons that you can get from the packages. These prestige weapons, these ones that you could only work towards during the faction rallies, would be like really powerful, really unique weapons, and these weapons and gear would be rerollable through the vendor for a price, just like they were in Destiny 1 Year 1 with Iron Banner gear. And of course, you'll have other things like ornaments and such that can be unlocked during this period as well. And then the winning faction would of course have a really cool, really powerful weapon, on top of granting people who pledge to that faction the ability to turn in their tokens for a double token buff between rallies. So these people can work towards getting god-rolled weapons from their normal faction gear through their packages, and it's just a reward that makes sense, especially given the fact that RNG rolls are coming back to Destiny, and it's something that people will legitimately want to work towards if the factions have good weapons and gear. That makes sense to anybody? Just me? Probably not. Point being, their current iteration of faction rallies absolutely fucking sucks. They're a little more than a chore, but hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. And like always, stay frosty.